Good morning, everybody. I am Tommy, and you are on the Love Boat. What's happening? Oh, excuse me. Well, here we are, folks. Another morning. I feel fantastic. I hope you do. Jane Aldridge, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. You know what? I want to thank everybody. Last night was a great show on the boat. And I mean, from an audience standpoint, not mine. I'm not slapping myself on the back. But you know, when it moves, the chat moves the way it did last night, I had to go back. Hey, Benny, good to see you. I had to go back and look at a lot of the comments after the fact. And it was, I did it last night. Normally I go to sleep and I knock it out in the morning. But last night I went through the chat. Boy, you know, not to pander to the audience more than I normally do, but I got a very intelligent audience. Really brings up a lot of points that sort of steers me in direction sometimes, and I find that fascinating. I really do. But today, hey, Brock Bandy, good to see you. But today we're back on the important stuff. I'm not saying that the Epstein stuff isn't, but it's stuff that needs to get talked about. But it's not going to be daily, hey, I can actually make my life better with some of the content that we're talking about. Hey, Lindy, good to have you here. But what we do in the mornings, especially recently, is work directly on things that can change your life. By the way, for those that have been throwing ones my direction, I feel a whole lot better this morning than I did yesterday. Night and day. Honestly, night and day. Now, you can throw some ones up for Johnny. We seem to be, we were discussing this morning over breakfast, that perhaps it's an age difference. You know, I'm slightly younger than my brother, but I think it's a combo of age and metabolism and all kinds of other stuff, because I seem to be a day ahead of him on almost everything, in terms of, like, you know, the eating and the processing and all of the stuff that we're doing. And I think he's going through a lot of what I went through yesterday. But yesterday we talked in the morning about staring at blank pages. And a lot of times, hey, Barbara Aldrich, good to have you here. A lot of times when you're journaling, some of it seems like busy work. Like I was saying, if you're staring at a blank page, yesterday I talked about how you start going back and journaling things from your past, because it's a lot easier sometimes to, instead of trying to talk about what's happening in your life, to go back and start looking at things from your past. This is another one of those things when we talk about journaling that may seem like, you know, Tommy's giving us busy work so that we can just continue the processing. I mean, the journaling. That's really not what this is at all. This is a show about changing your perspective. You've probably heard me talk a lot on the Lifeboat or the Love Boat about the 1 to 10 perspective chart, so to speak, that I use in life. This is a super important thing for me, because I take really small things and I allow them to affect me emotionally, which translates to physically and translates to sleep and everything else. Today, morning journaling was easier. People, did you hear that? How cool is that? That makes it all worthwhile. It's going to get even easier after today. I promise you it is, because now when you're staring at an empty page, there's another thing that you can do that will get your journaling going. And again, this is never busy work. What we're doing is we're peeling onions, right? We're trying to get to who you are, right? This isn't about anything else. It's not about, you know, I mean, so much comes out of journaling, but it's not about scheduling your life better. Although I guarantee you that if you start journaling, your life will be smoother in terms of scheduling things out. It also changes an awful lot in terms of your mindset. And that's really what journaling should do more than anything. I talk about how things are pipe dreams when they're in your head. When you're thinking about, oh man, I would love to get, you know, we were talking about moving. And I started talking about leaving America over a decade ago. In fact, almost a decade and a half ago now. But it was a pipe dream, even back then, because I hadn't begun the journaling process yet. I hadn't started to do the things that I do now on a daily basis that have transformed me from the person that I was, who was a drug addict and a very disorganized human being, into somebody whose thoughts are now something that I look at daily. Now, I use really silly examples all the time. I am Charlene. Good to see you. I feel fantastic. Thank you for asking. A lot of times we talk about these things and I kind of have to use hyperbole or make it so, I have to almost make it so that it seems silly, but it gives you an idea. It brings into focus, so to speak, some of the things we're talking about. So you're in line with the grocery store. An example I use constantly. You know how we have that line that says you can't have more than 10 items if you're in this line? There's nobody that hasn't had the experience of a guy that gets or a gal that gets in that line that has 20 things in their cart. And it's frustrating as hell when you look at the person in front of you and you're like, damn it, there are 5 lines for people that have that much stuff with them. You shouldn't be in the line I'm in. I have 7 items, right? Well, for me, it's important for me to realize that I can't assign to that the same level of emotional intensity that I do if I lose a loved one. That's a 10. On that scale from 1 to 10, that's a 10. Somebody jumping in line at you, somebody beeping their horn at you in traffic, somebody riding too close to your bumper, right? Somebody saying something that's snarky or whatever. And all of a sudden, I start putting an 8, right, to that. And I start gritting my teeth because somebody beeped their horn in traffic. By the way, South America will completely cure you of that because the horn in South America gets used 10 times more than a directional signal or anything else. Like you take a cab ride, your cabbie is going to blow the horn 25 times on the way wherever you're going. It is just such a different kind of thing down here. We joke about it all the time. In America, man, there'd be fist fights on the side of the road constantly, North America. But that perspective meter isn't something that that just gets used when you realize that maybe you're a little out of sorts. Changing the perspective on your life is not always the easiest thing to do. One of the problems that we have, and I think that the more developed the nation that you live in, the more susceptible you are to losing sight of the things that are day-to-day blessings. And if that's a term that makes you uncomfortable, I apologize. Or advantages, right? Call it whatever you want. But there are people who keep what they call a gratitude journal. And this is, I got angry, wrote a journal page and felt better afterwards. Wow, that's processing, right? That's not shoving something in the closet. This is a beautiful concept, by the way, right? The night shift would have had to deal with what you were angry about had you not sat down and written it out first. Now, Lindy, when you go to bed this evening and the second shift comes on and your subconscious goes to work, because your brain doesn't go to sleep when you do. Your brain goes to work when your body goes to sleep. Clip-in, good to see you. You understand the difference? So tonight for Lindy, that's not going to happen. When she goes to sleep, she's not going to have to deal with whatever BS made her angry today. Journaling is a beautiful thing. It's like having a therapist on staff 24/7. Can't beat that with a stick. You really can't. So I'm not saying get a second journal and start doing a gratitude journal, although it's a great idea, but you got to get comfortable writing in a book every single day or speaking into a recorder or whatever it is you do to journal. You have to get comfortable with that before you're going to start having 4 different journals. And I have 3, right? One I carry with me at all times. It's just a small little book. Somebody actually made it for me. Pajama Pixie from Texas made it for me and sent it to me as a gift a couple of years ago. And if I get angry while I'm out, I'm less likely to deal with it properly if I don't have the ability to journal then. And sometimes I don't have the ability to sit down and write for 20 minutes. I could be in a room with people or whatever, but I will open that journal and I will write something at the top of it and I will close it. This is why it hasn't filled in 2 years. I'm putting an entry in that so that when I get home and I look at it, I go, ooh, I get out the big journal and I start doing exactly what Lindy did this morning. Hey, Barbara, good to see you here. Barbara, wait. Hola, good to see you. ¿Cómo estás? This is huge because the gratitude thing is something that we take for granted and it's awful. There are things that, and when you, like running the lifeboat and talking to people that are struggling with addiction. I'm not trying to be a jackwagon, but there are times that I'm blown away when you talk to people and all of the fantastic things that are happening in their life, they completely take for granted, right? That's supposed to be the way life is, right? Life shouldn't have any bumps in it. It should be smooth seas, right? Nothing, no choppy waters. That's kind of what we expect. And again, the more advanced and developed the society that you live in, the more we expect that. If a cable guy says, oh, I'm coming out to hook up your cable, we want that dude to say, I'll be out at 9:15. And if he's there at 9:19, we're gritting our teeth, right? This is kind of the more developed we become, the more things get to the point where you can do this. I can't tell you how many times I get pissed because it takes a minute, right? Hey, Winchester Super X, I am doing well. Thank you for asking. I can't tell you how many times something really, really small like that would really chap my backside, right? Now I'm in a place where if I want the person to come out and work on my my modem, right, for the internet, They're not going to say, we'll be there at Tuesday between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. where you're like, I got to hang out all day long to see when this person shows up. They'll say, we'll be out this week. Huh? Down here, they call it mañana time, right? It means tomorrow. Everybody's on mañana time. No one runs this fast-paced life. Because of the height of my home, I can look out on the city of Salinas, especially out of my bedroom window. I can see the entire city of Salinas from my bedroom. It's astounding to me that traffic doesn't do much. And when I say doesn't do much, I mean doesn't do anything until about 9 o'clock in the morning, which is crazy to me. But you look out and you see a couple of taxi cabs. The buses are definitely running, but the world hasn't come to life at 5 a.m. And I'm used to a world that doesn't go to sleep. I'm used to a world where there are people out there doing this, 24/7 around the clock. Everybody's running, doing things. Mañana time has been a very healing and cathartic thing for me. Huge healing and cathartic thing for me, because I don't deal well with that. I want everything scheduled in such a way that it's etched in stone. I don't want anybody else to screw up the timetable that I've got going for life, right? That will drive me nuts. Now I'm learning to let that go. It sounds cliche-ish. Try saying that 3 times fast. It's a cliche, right? It really is, that there are things that we can control and there are things that we can't. The old serenity prayer. Hey, I am Shailene. Good to see you. Poor old Johnny. Sorry. KM. Good morning, Krista Melinda. Good to see you. So God grant me the serenity, right? To accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, I probably said that 1 billion times, but I don't think I ever lived it at any level. Roberta, good morning. I'm feeling fantastic. Johnny could use some thoughts and prayers. He's a day behind in the healing process. And he probably got more sleep last night than we have gotten since we got to Salinas. We got up at about 4 a.m. We get up really, really early. Today at 5:30, we were both still in bed. And we're healing from a lot of workout and a lot of beating up the body and stuff like that. Rocket Queen, good to see you. Hey, Cindy G. This morning, got about another hour and a half of sleep, both of us. Got up, ate breakfast, journaled, and Johnny was like, I'm watching him on the couch do this one. And I said, man, go get some sleep. And he said, no, you know what? I've already gotten too much sleep. No, you haven't, right? If you just slept for 10 hours and your body is telling you to go to sleep, guess what? If you have that capacity, if you have the ability to go do it, the Italians call it the wisdom of the body. If you find yourself craving something really salty, guess what? There's probably a reason you're craving something really salty. It may have something to do with the fact that your body doesn't have enough sodium in it that morning. May sound crazy, but I believe wholeheartedly in the wisdom of the body. That was something that my grandmother used to talk about all the time. I didn't really buy it when she talked about it, because when you're young, you know everything, right? I joke about this all the time. I knew up until the age of about 25 that my dad knew nothing. At about 25, there was a light switch that went on, and I realized that I knew nothing and that man had never been wrong. Every piece of advice he had ever given me was perfect. But it takes a long time to get to that point. I may be giving myself too much credit. It might have been 35. Honestly, I was still pretty wasted through most of those years. But the epiphany that most of the people who were older who were giving me advice were not doing it just to hear themselves talk. Haven't tried yoga myself. I just ride my mountain bike and hoop when I got time. You know what? Those are both fantastic exercises. And I'm blessed to beat the band that when I was a kid and I was training with the North American Freestyle Ski Team, they happened to pick the mountain that I grew up at. So when I was a little kid, we would sort of trail behind them and just do with the same things they were doing. And it created a hopeful program, right? They had the Groms, they used to call us, and we were like Olympic hopefuls, and they would take the kids and allow them to train with the older guys. They stopped doing that because it also got a lot of those kids into really bad habits, drinking, smoking weed, doing drugs, steroids, all kinds of stuff that shouldn't have happened to kids. And they honestly shut the program down. But one of the things that they forced us all to do was yoga, because when you're skiing moguls, your legs get that big really quickly, right? It's one of the most unbelievable exercises for your legs, kind of like mountain biking is. Unbelievable exercise for the legs. Nothing like it, right? What you tend to struggle with is the flexibility. Interesting study that was, I actually read about this in the New England Journal of Medicine. They were talking about indicators in terms of how long you're going to live. And they said the best indicators, and when I first read this, I thought, they're punking me. This has got to be a joke. lay flat on your back, completely flat on the floor, and get up, right, from that position to a standing position, and count how many points of contact you have to do in order to do that. So your hand goes down, that's 1 point of contact. You roll to your left knee, that's the second, right? Then all of those things, every time a part of your body touches down, if you're getting over 5 points of contact in order to get up, you're not in good shape. I mean, good shape, you could be in great physical shape, but you're not going to be living as long. Flexibility starts to kill people, or lack of it. It's the more flexible you are, you're not older than the hills, Lindy. I've never realized there was such a dark side to most sports until the last 20 years or so. Oh, I know, right? It's the truth. I have brain damage, a lot of it. And I mean, I damaged my brain doing drugs. I'm self-aware. I did a lot of damage to myself because of the habits that I kept. But that's not what they're taking images of when I go in and get CAT scans and PET scans. They're taking images of brain damage that was done by concussions. And when I die, they're going to call it chronic traumatic encephalopathy, right? Like the NFL players had. But they literally cannot diagnose you with that when you're alive. In order to be able to do that, they take your brain and cut it into really thin slices and look at it underneath a magnifying glass. Can't do that while you're alive, thank God. Hey, Just Risa, good to have you here. Glad that you're here. So what I have now is I have cerebral infarction. I have parts of my brain that don't get blood anymore, and there's not much going on. They're dark gray spots when they do PET scans. And it's from a counter-coup injuries, meaning that I would over-rotate a backflip, and I would land on my back, and my head would go boom and hit the ground, right? But before that would happen, nature makes you put your hands back, right, to make sure that your head doesn't hit the ground. And you get shoulder surgeries, and I've had a grip of them. And if it's really bad, well, I'm glad you're taking time to speak out here. I love that. If it's a really bad crash, then you get what's called a total. And a total is you tear the labrum, you rip the rotator cuff, you break your collarbone, and you dislocate your shoulder. Boom, it's done. And it's human nature that when you know your head's coming back, our arms go back to protect the gray matter, right? And the shoulder surgeries take you out of competition a lot longer than anything else does. So our coaches would literally talk to us about training to do this number. When you know you're going to over-rotate a back flip, cross your arms, because it will keep you from needing shoulder surgery. It will also guarantee that your head hits the snow. And when your head hits the snow, my head would hit back here, and your brain sloshes, right? And all of that cerebral spinal fluid that surrounds your brain. And then it comes forward, right? That's the counter-coup part of the injury. And it hits the front of your skull, and it gets bruised. And what's crazy is I apparently rotated my head slightly. All of the injuries were on one side. And I don't know whether this was just luck, how it kind of worked, whatever it has been. I have been here off and on, but changed my screen name. Hashtag free Tommy Skilba. Well, thank you. I love that. How's Johnny doing? He's feeling it. He's 4 years older than I am. And, you know, he also didn't have the capacity or the ability to take 10 years to just work out, right? I spent a lot of time in prison where working out was part of the day to keep me sane, right? I wasn't trying to be Wes Watson. I didn't want to, get out and show people just how chiseled I could be. But I wanted to make sure that I didn't have a lot of time on my hands, because when I was in prison, time on my hands meant sitting and thinking about sticking a needle in my arm, right? Thinking about all of the reasons that I wanted to make the pain in my life go away. Instead, I started this number, right? I started journaling, and the perspective had to change in my life. That was the hardest thing for me to do, because all of a sudden I was the term used to be dry drunk. You used to hear that all the time. What it really meant is I was a person who didn't have the chemicals in my body, but I was still a junkie. I was living that way now. I do. And I'm glad that you are back. I really am. And I'm glad that you're talking. A lot of people have been speaking up. It's a beautiful thing. Why, thank you, Rocket Queen. I'm really impressed with Johnny's yoga skills, because Johnny's never done yoga. But when I was a kid back in the day skiing, flexibility was a huge issue. Most of the injuries, a shot to your head and a concussion, the following day you could be out skiing. But a torn muscle would take you right off of the depth chart, and you weren't going to be doing a whole lot of training or a whole lot of competing or skiing. So they got us doing yoga. I was in my early teens, and boy, the hell we would get from all of the people that did other sports. They used to call it the Jane Fonda guys. Oh, you're doing that Jane Fonda thing. And at the time, the Jane Fonda workout tape was probably the biggest thing in the world. So we got picked on constantly for it. And I guarantee you that all those people that were giving us crap, if they haven't taken up yoga, they're probably wishing that they had back in the early 80s. Would you be willing to do a stream about chronic traumatic encephalopathy? I have a personal interest, maybe tie it in with the true crime story if needed. Yeah, I think I've done one, but I'd be more than happy to do another one. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure if I've done an entire show on it. I will do that, Barbara Wade. I promise I will. I think that's a pretty good idea. I have neurological issues from a neuromuscular disorder. I am speaking out on my channel about corruption on YouTube and how people are taking beef to the streets to ruin their lives. Wow. You know what? Put a link up. Everybody hear that? That is actually a really interesting concept. And boy, oh boy, it's one that I could probably weigh in on. But that was a gift. That 13-year-old, hey, we're going to force you to do this yoga thing was an incredible gift. What's impressive is watching Johnny Scoville do it, because he started yoga 3 days ago. I'll be really honest with you. It pissed me off a little bit. He burns me with peppers and has been doing it forever. And, you'd think that, I would have become kind of Johnny-like with all the peppers I've been forced to eat over the course of my life. But what he does with peppers, I'm never going to be able to do that. It's just not a possibility. And I thought that when I started to do yoga with him, he was going to suck at it. I'm sorry, I really did. I thought that, and one of the reasons that we filmed the first one, and I said to him, listen, there's going to be a lot of laughs watching you do this, but let people do it, because when people see that this isn't, that you don't have to be good at this, because it's like golf. No one's good at golf. For real, no one. Even the pros, they're way better than the rest of the world, but if they were excellent at it, everybody would be shooting about 18 under par every time they went out, right? You would not be shooting par on most holes. It's one of those sports that humble people. Yoga is one of those sports or activities where if you believe that you are going to be good at this right off the bat, you're probably not. It's going to take a long time. It hasn't with Johnny. And he's a gifted athlete. He really is always kind of been a gifted athlete. But I was shocked at how flexible the cat was. I was shocked at how good his balance was. Starting this at this late in life, there are certain balance poses that I just didn't think he was ever going to get without one hand on the wall. And I promise you, this is the gospel truth. There was no warm-up. There was no practice. When you see me explaining those poses to him, they're the first time he's ever seen them. By design. You're right, Lindy, brotherly love. I was kind of looking forward to him struggling with that the way I struggle with peppers, or eating foul fish and vomiting all over the place, right? Or any of the other challenges that I've done because I am Johnny Scoville's little brother. But he killed it. He absolutely killed it. Everybody who tries yoga gets something out of it, right? Just like anyone who truthfully tries journaling will get something out of it. If you're going to pick one, be a little bit less flexible in your body and be a lot more flexible in your brain. You'll thank me later. So the meter, the perspective meter, I had to change my perspective. I was a dry drunk. In my case, I was a heroin addict, right? Somebody addicted to the morphine molecule and had been for decades. And now I was no longer addicted to the morphine molecule. But in every other aspect of my life, I lived the exact same way. I wasn't getting up early. I wasn't making my bed. All of the things I did as a junkie, I was continuing to do as somebody that wasn't doing dope. And I had a mentor that changed all that. In fact, he made it so idiot-proof for me, because sometimes for a guy that isn't stupid, I do an awful lot of really stupid stuff. Until we get legal to start taking responsibility and know they are liable because we have been reporting red flags, nothing will change. I'm a fierce fighter with God on my side. I love that. I really do. I love that. And I'm going to come over and check out what you're doing. You have my word. I think and I'm not patronizing you. I really do think that's God's work. Some of the stuff that goes on these days on social media in general causes people to commit suicide. Did you hear I didn't say unaliving? I think that what the big red button does with words like rape and words like suicide that they don't let you say, right, or they're going to demonetize your video, they're doing it because they're by allowing us to use words like unaliving or grape. Instead of saying cocaine, I got to say something like Bolivian marching powder or that white stuff that takes you up. No, man, you need the harsh of these words need to be out there for the world. There's a reason behind that, right? There really is. But it does cost a whole lot of suicides. I mean, we know of 15 in the last 5 years just from YouTube. Now, I promise you, those are creators that had big channels, right? Those aren't the cases of people that we don't know about, people that had very, very small channels that didn't really have a footprint, but got bullied into the point where they take their lives. And a lot of times it's people that are underage. When we were in high school, people would trash one another and especially young girls. Young boys go outside and punch each other. They're much more sort of militant and violent. Young boys punch each other. Young girls try to destroy each other's reputation, call each other sluts, right? All kinds of terrible stuff. And that's never been good. Like Mean Girls, right? Give them the opportunity to do that. Now you have people in other countries weighing in and picking on these people before their brains are ready for that kind of stuff. Journaling, folks, gives you the opportunity to separate yourself from things like that. Separate yourself from hate. Because when people are out there trashing you or people are doing things, I could take that to a 10. And I started to protect myself my first year doing YouTube by not watching anything that anybody said bad about me. I did not watch any videos. I did in the beginning, but on December the 4th, right? It was my New Year's resolution and I did it on December 4th. I said, I'm starting my New Year's resolution almost a month early. I'm never going to watch a video somebody makes about me ever again. And it made me a hell of a lot happier, but you still can't avoid it. People find ways so that you at least know people are out there talking about you. But I started to put it on perspective meters because it certainly didn't rise to the level of losing my dad, which was a 10, right? It didn't rise to the level of losing my freedom, which was a 10. But I lived most of my life until I was about 46, where 90% of things that happened to me emotionally were somewhere between a 7 and a 10. And it was sometimes the smallest stuff in the entire world. I pick up a pen to journal and the pen is out of ink. I'm cursing, throwing the thing against the wall, acting like if you were to just watch it on a video, you'd go, oh my God, somebody just told that dude that he's getting a divorce. Somebody just told that dude that something happened to one of his kids. If you were to just watch and not hear what I was yelling about, you'd go, oh, that poor guy. And then if you were to turn the volume on, you'd go, that was over a pen, right? That was over, somebody cutting him off in traffic. So I had to start putting things on a perspective from 0 to 100. And I had a mentor that helped with this. I also had a mentor that said, you can't be living the same life you did. If you did it while you were a drug addict, don't do it anymore. If you didn't do it while you were a drug addict, you better start making it a habit. So I beat to death getting up in the morning and making your bed. I know people get tired of hearing it, but it's the first shot every day, right? It's the first shot every day to set a goal and to actually achieve that goal. Why is it so damn important that we do that? Well, because addiction in all of its varieties, science has now taught us, comes from a malfunctioning reward center. You've probably heard me say that about 5,000 times, right? I like this. This is fantastic. I like the 5s questioning. Ask myself, will this matter in 5 minutes, 5 months, 5 years? Puts things in perspective. I love it. I love anything that puts things in perspective. One of the other things that I found out really worked for me, right? In the last couple of weeks, I was diagnosed with blood on the brain. I have to follow up CT scan on Friday, feeling a little concerned. Can we get some thoughts and prayers for I am Shailene? Nothing scared me more on planet Earth, and I've been in some fairly scary situations, than the diagnosis that I got about my brain. I also got it in federal prison, which is not really where you want to get any kind of diagnosis because the bedside manner is not fantastic. And I'm not trying to bust on all people that go into that line of work if they're doctors. There was one, his name was Jesus Fernandez. And I say his name because I'm going to say nothing but great things about him. This dude was at retirement age. He was done, and he found out that there was a federal prison nearby. He could get a job going in and working with the inmates. And this guy cared. Like, he really cared. But in my experience, the vast majority of doctors who were working inside the federal system, right, medical doctors, were in there because they got caught doing something on the street that ended their career. So they were still allowed to continue to be a doctor, but this was about the only place they could do it. And honestly, I'm not making that up. You get out, you start trying to look these people up because there was animosity and things built up. By the way, not on my last sentence. I let all of that crap go. I learned perspective. One of the things that happened is, like yesterday, I said, you stare at a blank page and I'm going, damn it. And I would start to journal about things from the past. My mentor taught me to ask myself questions. Firsts. Can you remember the first time you did this? Can you remember the first time you did that? Can you remember your first kiss, the first love at first sight, the first anger, the first embarrassment, the first teacher that inspired you, right? The first teacher you wanted to throw out of a window. All of these things got the pen rolling. And the more the pen rolled, the more I found out about myself. And those busy work assignments were actually getting me to peel an onion about things from my past. And that nailed it. That gave me the opportunity to find out why I was actually doing dope, because it wasn't just because I liked the way it felt, right? If that were the case, we would quit less than 3 to 4 months in, especially with the morphine molecule, because that feeling good stuff goes away real fast. And then you start doing this stuff just so that you're not sick. But what never went away was that it made me forget the things that made me feel like I was less than. Psychologists and counselors can earn about the same paycheck in prisons as out in the world. Doctors earn less working in prisons than in the world in general. Well, and I'll tell you something. Psychologists and counselors, completely different animal in federal prison. I met some incredible counselors. And I think in almost every case, they took the job early in their careers. And they did it because it was a steady stream of people. It was almost like getting a PhD, right, in what it is that they do. And they got it fast because guys were ordered in there to talk to them. Now, you don't have to talk to them. You can sit in their board for an hour, but they're going to make you go down there. So they got to see people constantly, and they got to see people who had really serious childhood trauma. You ever wonder why child molesters are treated so hideously in prison? I mean, obviously it's a disgusting crime, but what crimes aren't disgusting? You know what I mean? Why is it okay to murder your wife, right? But if you raped her, they're going to beat the hell out of you in prison. You know, it doesn't make sense when you look at it in the bigger picture. Everybody's in there for a crime. The reason is almost everybody in there had something happen like that to them when they were a kid. And it's probably one of the reasons that they're in prison. So when they get an opportunity to make one of those people pay, because chances are the person that did it to them didn't pay for it. And I wholeheartedly believe that is one of the reasons that they're so cruel to those individuals. I believe that. But back to staring at my blank piece of paper. One of the things that Q got me to do was kind of the go back in time, busy work kind of thing. He called it peeling the onion. And it's exactly what it is. You know, to get to the core issue, you got to start going backwards, I promise. And I didn't believe that. I thought all therapists were wrong. No, you know what I mean? My parents didn't get divorced. I wasn't beat up like I got. You know, to me, it was just a cop-out. It was the ability for me to hang my addiction on someone else, right? My decisions, what landed me in prison, if I could find a fall guy for that, if I could find a straw man or a straw woman that I could blame all this on, well, then it's not my fault, right? Then I don't have to take responsibility for my actions. This was my thought. I have to take responsibilities for my actions. But there were people that did things to me that set me on a course. Doesn't mean I couldn't have stopped that course. But coming to the realization that the reason that I continued to treat myself like a pincushion, even after 100 abscesses, 25 trips to emergency rooms, addiction, right, is continuing to do the same habit or the same behavior, even in the face of a gazillion reasons to stop. It's doing hideous things to you and you keep doing it. That's addiction, right? But when I stare at this blank page, one of the things I can always do is peel the onion. Always. You can always ask yourself a question. It doesn't take a whole lot of creativity to ask something about your past and start to write about it. Every teacher you could remember and things about them, right? Those are huge things that just get you writing. However, there's one that is just as easy when you're looking at a piece of paper that's blank, and it may be more effective. I started to write things I was grateful for. Now, if you tell somebody in a federal prison to do that day one, there's no way in hell they're going to come up with a lot of things, because you're looking around going, man, I'm stuck here. Sometimes I just get stuck and feel like a failure. Absolutely. And this is why we're having this conversation. If you get stuck, Ashley G, I'll use me as an example. If I get stuck, right, I could write things down. And when I was in federal prison is when I got stuck. I don't get stuck anymore. But I've been doing this for a long time. But when I was in federal prison, I would get stuck almost every day. And Q said to me, write down the things you're grateful for. And the hat that I was at the time went, oh yeah, I got tons to be grateful for, right? Tons. I'm in federal prison, and for the last 7 months, I would wait in the line at 5:30 in the morning to try to get a job at Unicor, only to get sent home an hour later, standing there like an idiot, begging for an 8-hour-a-day job that was going to pay me about 15 cents an hour. Begging for it, never getting it. The frustration of being inside that place. I said, yeah, I got a ton to be grateful for. And he said, you told me that you pray every day more than anything that your dad isn't going to die while you're in federal prison. I said, yeah. And where does my head go? Right? Exactly. Not, wow, every day has been answered prayer. My dad's still here. He was old. His health was terrible. But instead of going, my God, right, is delivering on this. I'm praying for this, and he's still here. My brain would go to, yeah, and he's had 4 medical problems in the last 2 years. Not, he survived 4 medical problems in the last 2 years. Epic ones that should have killed him. Instead of being grateful for the fact that that was happening, I concentrated on the shit part of everything, that perspective meter, right? That should have been a 10 in gratitude. Instead, it was a 10 in the opposite direction. My kids weren't with me. I could concentrate on that all day long, but they were safe, right? Their mom was sober. We're divorced, but she's been sober for 22 years. It'll be 22 years. Yeah, 22 years this fall. At the time, I was pissed that she got sober and I didn't. In fact, I took some of the last money that I had on earth to send her to rehab, and she left me for another human being while she was in rehab. Another woman, I'll keep it real. She left me for a woman, which was tough on my brain, on my ego, on all these things. Change your perspective a little, and the fact that she got sober, the fact that I took that cash and did that, right? I had a sober person taking care of my kids. That's the best possible case scenario, right? But when you're a jughead, and I was the king of the asshats, I could take anything. If you said, Tommy, we got $1 million for you, right? $1 million in $20 bills. All you got to do is take this, go home, have a good life, start at 20s. Man, that's like, what? It's almost 110 pounds, man. I got to carry this crap all the way home. I'm not being funny. I could find a way to take anything and look at the negative side of it. Air Supply, good to see you. I could take anything and find the negative side of it. Once I began to change my perspective, I changed my life massively. And I'm not, if you think I'm here telling you I'm perfect, I am more flawed than anyone you're ever going to meet. But I'm aware of the fact that I'm flawed. And for the first 46 years of my life, I thought everybody else was flawed. I did dope because the world was so stupid that I couldn't cope with them. I did dope because I was smarter than everybody on planet Earth, right? And yet people thought I was stupid. I was the king, the prince, the duke, right? The professor of being negative. So a gratitude journal is a huge deal. If Q had been dumb enough to say to me, now you got to start another journal and we're going to call it, I would have been like, I'm out of here, man. I'm out of here. But he said, when you find yourself stuck, think of all of the things that you're grateful for. And again, I said, yeah, I got a lot to be grateful for. He said, tell you what, let's change that a little bit. Write down all of the crappy things that could have happened to you yesterday that didn't. Your dad might have passed while you were sleeping, right? Your wife could have relapsed, meaning your kids are out there being raised by a junkie. And it was a light switch. All of a sudden, I had the ability, when I was staring at a blank page like Ashley G and sometimes feeling stuck and like a failure, I had the ability to write down all of the things that were fantastic, for real. I was transforming my body. I had been given an opportunity by the federal government, right? I had to be punished. But I could look at it as I'm going to spend the next decade in hell, or I could say, what person out there is going to have people take care of everything in their life so that I could read a book a day? Who can read a book a day? Honestly, how the hell does that happen? Who can take 3 hours a day to work out? Hour of yoga, an hour of cardio, and an hour of push-ups, squats, things like that for strength training. Who the hell can do that? No one can fit that into a day. It's impossible. Yes, second smartest man I ever met. My dad was pretty incredible. But Q is, there's no such thing as gurus. But he'll do until he will absolutely do until a guru shows up. Right? I've never met one, but he'll do just fine until I do meet one. And I would say to him, you're my guru, and he would grit his teeth. He was a big fan of saying gurus don't exist, but he was a fantastic substitute guru since there really aren't any real ones. Okay? But that gratitude stuff stopped me from staring at empty pages, Ashley G. That gratitude stuff stopped me, right, from ever feeling like I was failing at this journaling thing again, because I now had the ability to look at life differently. And in the beginning, that's not how I saw it. I just saw it that, holy crap, now I can fill this page so that if he says to me, hold up that journal and let me see that you're actually writing, now I can fill that page. I don't have to feel like I got to create stuff, because this is easy. But if you take 365 days and every single day, do it in the morning, do it before you go to bed, whatever, write down the things that you're grateful for, that perspective meter will blow up. It will change so huge, and it will change how you view the world, right? It will massively change how you view the world. Give you a perfect example. I lost about 20% of my audience in 5 months. That's a kick in the junk. And I concentrated on that so much that I forgot almost every lesson that I had been taught. However, when I started to realize that the people walking away from the lifeboat, soon to be the love boat, were people that needed to not be here, for real. There were people that said, I'm going to need to step away from this until I see what the hell is going on. That's not what I'm talking about. The people that reached out to tell me I was a piece of shite, do I really want those people around? If what they were hearing was true, and it wasn't, I knew that, maybe the rest of the world didn't. But if they were hearing this and their first response was to lash out and tell me what a loser I was, are those the kind of people you want? Do you know how many people reached out and said, I don't know if what everyone is saying is true, but if it is, I'm going to pray for you because you need a lot of help. That's a lot harder to hate, right? How do you hate someone that says, until I find out whether or not this is true, I'm just going to pray for you? How do you hate that person? But I'll be honest, my gratitude stuff, I stopped doing it. I stopped looking for things to be grateful for, and I started concentrating on things to be pissed off about. And you know what happened? You do know what happened. Go back and watch my content. I got off the path massively. The basic building blocks of how you change your life are so damn simple. It really is. It's amazingly simple. If you're not living the life that you want to live, you need to adopt a whole new set of habits, and you need to eliminate the stuff that you're doing while you're not happy. Pretty simple. For me, almost all of it is right here. I had pipe dreamed my life away. Man, I would love to move to Ecuador, right? Pipe dream. Write down that you want to move there. Write down what it takes to actually do that. Here are the processes. Here are the steps. I went from pipe dreaming stuff to having goals, right? A dream, a pipe dream becomes a goal when you write it down, right? It's no longer out in the ether being dreamed about. It's a goal. And now there is a list of things that I can do to achieve that goal. What do I have to do to make this happen? And how can I break that off into small bites? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Same thing. I started to write goals down. I started to write down all of the things that I wanted in life. And you know what else was huge? And the guru, or the guy that wasn't a guru, and the wisdom that he had, didn't say to me, hey, as you write down your goals, write down why you want your goal, right? I would like to emigrate to another country. Write down the reason why. He didn't tell me that in the beginning. He just said, write down your goals. And he waited for a good chunk of time. And then he said to me, oh, I got a great suggestion for you. I said, what? He said, when you're writing those goals down, write down why you want it. And I went, okay. You know what this does? Because if you write down, I want a Ferrari, right? Nothing wrong with wanting a Ferrari, right? Why do you want it is the question. And then you got to write that down. Why do I really want a Ferrari? I don't drive 150 miles an hour. I'm never going to be race driving something. Why do I want a Ferrari? Well, because I want people to look at me and think I'm cooler than I am. I want people to look at my car and go, wow, he's successful. Well, that's a shit reason to want something. I'm sorry, it is. Hump reason to watch. Pardon my French. I'm working on that again. I promise I am. But that's a terrible reason to want something. If you write down the reason that you want it, it's going to slap you in the head and tell you that you're an idiot. Or it's going to go, wow. Right? When I wrote down that I wanted to start the Lifeboat channel, I didn't write down because I wanted to make money. That never, ever appeared once. If it did, the channel would have failed. You know why? Because I wasn't making any money. You know what I wrote? I wrote, I want to change the lives of 6 people. I want somebody, right, who is currently using to stop using. I want someone who has just started to stop. And I want the person who can't stop to make changes so that at least they're reducing harm. I didn't write that down in the beginning, by the way, because in the beginning I didn't even understand that as a concept. I thought if you weren't cold turkey quit, then you're a failure. I thought if you were a guy that was smoking a pound of crack a day and you traded that for 1 joint a week, you were a failure. It's the dumbest thing in the entire world. But I had to watch in real life because all of these things were theory. Now I was in the world watching it. How do you look at somebody who was spending thousands of dollars and stealing stuff, right, to smoke crack, who now buys $30 worth of weed a week and not look at that as a win? A person who's now going to work and punching a clock and making money and taking care of their family. And I'm going to go, you're not really sober. God help us. If you ever utter the phrase, you're not really sober, go get a tack hammer and whack yourself in the head with it a couple of times. I mean it. Stay in your lane. If you're sober, you know you're sober. People say in the chat, you'll read it. I promise you'll read it in the next week. Someone will come in here and say, I haven't done opiates in 3 years. I mean, I'm not really sober because I'm doing Suboxone. Or I'm not, it's not like I really quit because I'm doing, the hell you're not. I'm sorry. I know those medical assisted treatment drugs better than the next guy. And if you had a 5 gram a day heroin habit, or you had a half a gram a day heroin habit, and now you're doing Suboxone, Suboxone's not getting you high. Did you trade one drug for another? Yep. But it's like trading Nolan Ryan for Jim Fregosi, right? It's a hell of a trade. It's a fantastic freaking trade. These are concepts that I couldn't wrap my brain around. I'll tell you something else. I started to write down why I wanted my goals. And I thought, wow, he should have told me that in the beginning. Duh. I wouldn't have seen the benefit of it if he had told me that in the beginning. I was really thick-headed, right? And then after about a month of this, maybe 2, he said, hey, how's the goal thing going? I said, man, it's a lot better. It really is a lot different than it was before. Tony Suter, I want you to know I feel fantastic. Thank you for prayers. I really do. I feel great today. Then he said, good, that's awesome. I got another idea. I said, what's that? When you write down your goals now, write down what you want, why you want it, and what you're willing to do to get it. And don't write anything, right? Yeah, I mean, I wanted the channel to be successful, and I would do anything to make that happen. That's a terrible answer. There's nothing concrete about that. It's a pipe dream. I may have written it on paper, but it's still a pipe dream. This is nuts and bolts stuff. This is actual application stuff. So I want to help people avoid going to prison. I want to help people get sober, right? This is why I want the channel. The goal is to start a YouTube channel. Here's why I want to do it. And what am I willing to do to get it? I'm willing to go an hour a day, 2 hours a day. I'm willing to take the time to answer emails from people. I'm willing to take the time to go through comment sections. Now, I'm probably closing in on 300,000 or 400,000 comments. And this is no lie. In the first probably 2 years of the Lifeboat, I didn't miss answering a comment. Wasn't very difficult because there weren't that many comments. But now there are people catching videos from months ago. They tend to stack up. I don't always get to all of the comments. I get to the emails. What are you willing to do to get your goals? All of these things, right? Take these little tweaks, massively change your life. But none of them will mean anything if you're still the guy that says, you're giving me $100 in $50 bills. That weighs 56 pounds. I got to carry all that home. Okay? Don't you have those in hundreds? Is there any way you could just write me a check and I could take it to the bank? I mean, it's kind of a pain in the ass carrying all that money. Instead of being the guy that could look at anything and see the negative side of it, I was the guy that could look at anything and see the positive side of it. And that's really it's a life-changing paradigm shift. And it's not one that Q could hand to me, and it's not one that I can hand to you, but I promise you, this thing will hand it to you. When you stare at a blank piece of paper, write down all of the things you're grateful for. And if you find yourself saying, like I did, yeah, like I got a lot to be grateful for, ponder that. Do a little meditating on that. How's your family? And running a channel like this, I would imagine that KM, right, Kristen, Melinda, people that work in therapy probably get an understanding of this. But being the guy that runs the Lifeboat channel, I got a chance to talk to people every day who were where I was a decade ago. And it was a gratitude reminder every single day. A day has not gone by in the last decade that I have not written at least once a day, I am grateful for Q. I am grateful that God brought that cat into my life. And I'm not jumping up on a soapbox or preaching to you, right? But I've always been one of those people that since I started doing that, because of my particular brand of beliefs, if he had been a white guy, it would have been a lot less impressive. He was a black dude in a federal prison. We're not supposed to talk to one another. And I don't mean that, I mean, it really is that way. He took a lot of crap for being kind to me. He had to live with a lot of BS from his people. I had to live with a lot of BS from my people. We had to really go out of our way to protect ourselves just because we had a relationship. We hung out and we talked every day. It's not really allowed. But it's so much more epic, right? That this dude was willing to get out of his comfort zone and take crap from the world to help a guy he'd never met. Boy, that's easy to be grateful for. But I'm not lying. When I first started doing the journaling thing, I was the guy that was saying, boy, it would be a whole lot better if this dude was white. I can't stand all of these people, right? Calling me the N-word lover and being jackasses and always trying to push me to see if they could get me to swing on them. People realized that if they wanted to push my buttons in prison, if you call someone a punk or a bitch, you literally have to punch that person in the face. If you don't, the fellas are going to beat the crap out of you. They're going to steal your stuff. And it is considered completely dishonorable to allow someone to say that to you. And those are the only two words, basically. People can say things to each other you wouldn't believe. But you want to fight a guy, you call him a punk or a bitch, and it's on. You have to fight. But these guys knew that they could sit around and start dropping the hard R and saying things to make me want to hurt them. It was like saying something about Johnny. You know what I mean? It was really getting to me. And I journaled about it, and I didn't talk to him, which should have been the first thing. But it was such an uncomfortable thing to say to him. Hey, man, when you're not around, people say this stuff. And he said to me, you do realize they're doing this just to piss you off, right? They're doing this because they can say that. They're not going to call you a punk because you're going to punch them in the face. They don't think they can take you. But they know that this isn't going to rise to the level where you're going to swing on them. But they can push your buttons, and they know it's pushing your buttons. They're renting space in your head with a word. And I said, no, it's not a word. He goes, yeah, it's just a word. It is. It's just a word. Now, it's a hateful piece of crap word said by the dumbest people on planet Earth. No question. Air Supply, have a great day. Thanks for spending time with us. It means the world to me. I had to learn perspective. So instead of saying to myself, you know what? Because to me, again, I'm not preaching, but to me, God was a huge part of everything that was happening in my life, right? So instead of saying, God is flexing by having the person that was going to save my life in a federal prison be black, right? This was a huge grateful thing. It wouldn't have had the same effect if it was a white dude. It wouldn't have. And there they preach this BS, and it is BS, by the way, that we all got to take care of each other. You'll never see a white gang member hit somebody of another race. You won't see them stab somebody from another race. They're always stabbing each other. In theory, they banded together to protect themselves from other races trying to attack them. Maybe that was the truth way back then. It sure as hell isn't now. We used to joke about it and call it the Kill Whitey Club. What really happens is those gang members wait for a new white guy to come in, and then they try to get that guy to go front a bunch of dope. They do half the dope with him, and when the debt gets so bad that the guy can't pay it, they beat him up, right? And they go up to the drug dealer and say, hey, we took care of that piece of crap. He's off the yard. Then they wait for the next guy to come in and do it again. I'm not kidding. I watched that happen in Victorville so often that I used to try to get to people before anyone else did and say, hey, when someone comes up and says, hey, you want to get high? What they mean is, can I run up a $5,000 debt on your tab? There are guys who stay high their entire prison sentence by hurting one of their own, one right after the other. The fact that this guru, the fact that the guy that wanted to step up and say, I want to help you for no reason, was not the same skin color, should have been something that I wrote down gratitude on. But I couldn't see a positive thing if you slapped me in the face with it. Taking the time to write down things you're grateful for, especially when it's hard to be grateful for anything, will change your life massively. You will become one of those people who, in the face of the worst things that can ever happen, my dad dying was the most difficult thing I ever dealt with. And we already had haters who said stuff like, one less Scoville, right? Or said stuff about his sexual preferences within a couple of hours of him being dead. Just hateful stuff. But because of that black cat in the federal prison, journaling about my dad passing on about day 5, I wrote down in that journal, I just got through a 10. Nothing that comes down the pike after this is ever going to be this hard. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. This is it. On that perspective thing, here's a rock solid 10. And if there was an 11 on that bad boy, it would have been an 11. But this one goes to 11. It would have been bigger than 10 if that was a possibility. And I didn't stick a needle in my arm. And as tough as it was to lose my dad, I was going to lose my dad. Not trying to bum anybody out here, but if you have both of your parents, you're not going to have them forever. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't, right? It was an inevitability. But the day that my dad died, the first thing I wrote in the journal was, thank God I was free when he died. I would not have gotten over it. I wouldn't have. I'm sorry. With all of the help and all of the prayers, I don't know what would have happened. I would not have gotten through it. The other thing that I was able to gratitude about and write what I was grateful for, it took a few weeks, but I was grateful that all of the people in my life knew that I could get through that. Everybody that loved me had to deal with the loss of the guy that made my family what it was, right? Sort of the king of the family. He was more than just a dad. He was massively bigger than that to my family. And while I was dealing with the loss of my mentor, my best friend, my father, the funniest guy I ever met, the smartest guy I ever met, like he was so much more to me than a dad. He was the best man at my first wedding. But dealing with that, I didn't have to deal with the terror that my son or my brother was going to go, rob a bank to get heroin. My family had to not only deal with burying my father, but they had to wonder whether or not I was going to be able to handle that. But instead of, I promise you, if it had not been for journaling, if it had not been for all the stuff that I was doing, I'd have been pissed that those people couldn't trust that I could stay sober. That's how I would have looked at it. Instead, within about 2 to 3 weeks of my father's death, and I didn't, I wasn't in a county jail asking for them to put money on my books. Everybody in my family kind of realized that, you know what? If Tommy got through that, I don't think I got to worry about him the same way. It was a gift to everybody. It's amazing if you can shift your perspective on how you look at things. A very smart man once said to me, 5% of what happens to you over the course of your life, you will have absolutely no control over. I can't stop my dad from dying, but I can control what that does to me. I can't control that some asshat is going to celebrate my dad's death, but I can control how I react to those people celebrating my dad's death. The 95%, I have control over that 95%. Took a lot of journaling to realize that, even though somebody said it to me in that sentence, in those words. A lot of things that he said to me, I had to process for a couple of years in a book before I got the gravity of what it meant. Like the goal stuff. What do you want? Why do you want it? And what are you willing to do to get it? That's a whole lot different than a pipe dream. Man, I would really love to live someplace where there was a lot less hate. Boy, would I like to emigrate to a place that, I really want. I had been talking about this for over a decade. But see, that was a pipe dream. Then I wrote down why I wanted it. And I wrote down what I was willing to do to get it. And here I am. And it's funny because same thing with the channel. I had learned from my mentor that if you wanted to be successful at something, you found people that were successful at it and you emulated them. If they allowed you to ask them questions, you did. You tried to learn from their mistakes. So I went and talked to people before I started the YouTube channel. I've told this story a bunch of times. But I told people what my plans were, and they were like, it's going to be a live channel? I said, yeah, you're going to fail. I promise you're not going to make $1. That wasn't failure to me. I didn't care. Honestly, I never cared if this channel made $1. And I didn't think I was ever going to be able to make a living doing it either. But that's not why I was doing it. I didn't start this channel and not have a job. I started this channel, had a 40-hour-a-week job. This was a mission, right? I don't want to use the word ministry because it would scare the hell out of people. But this was that kind of a thing for me. And it was a fulfillment of a promise. Because as I've told people before, I said to them, I can put half of my paycheck on your books for the rest of my life. For real. I don't need a Ferrari. I don't need that life. I just need to be able to pay the bills. And he said, I want your money. I got more money than you do. He's been saving money since he started working at Unicorn. If he gets out, he's set, right? For real. He's got enough money to live on for the rest of his life. He's been very, very responsible. He has a stock portfolio. True story. I said, what can I do? How do you pay this back? And he said, you don't pay it back. And I'll be honest, I hate the term pay it forward because I think it's been commercialized, right? But that's what he said to me. Pay this thing forward. And I said, I'm not you. You know what he said to me? No, you're way more articulate than I am, right? You are a way better speaker than I am. But he wanted me to find somebody that I had no reason to help and help them. Right? That's what he did. I've probably, if you're new to the channel, maybe you never heard this, but his opening line, no joke, was, you are either the smartest dumb person I've ever met or the dumbest smart person I've ever met, but you're one or the other. And I hadn't met him. Seemed like an odd thing to say. I said, how the hell would you know? He said, because I've been watching you for weeks. And then he said, I would like something from you. And I will deliver something back. I said, what do you want from me? He said, you were talking to somebody about a reverse shell merger, which is a kind of stock deal. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I want to learn more about that. I want to learn everything about that. I said, all right. He said, I want to understand how it works. And I want to understand. And he started to give me specifics about it, right? And he said, and I'll deliver something to you. I said, what are you going to deliver from me? He said, I'll teach you how to never stick a needle in your arm ever again. I will prove to you that you can go through life without being wasted. I had nothing to lose. I like talking about stocks. I like talking about reverse shell mergers, about all of those things. And he said to me, first question, because he said, we'll go to the law library so that we're not out here with white guys and black guys staring at us. He said, the deep thinkers, right, avoid the law library at all costs, meaning that the jugheads weren't going to see us. The real idiots are never going to be in the law library anyway. Too many books in there. But before we went, he said, but I got one question before we go. I said, okay. And he said, how is it that these companies don't have to file quarterly reports, right? A reverse shell merger. How come those companies don't have to file quarterly reports? Because that's how you see if a company is worth a fart. You see what they're doing. You look at their quarterly reports and you see their assets and their liabilities, and you can see whether or not a company is worth investing in. He said, how is it those companies only have to do that once a year? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I said, because the shell, right, the defunct company, had to be pre-1933, right? And he nodded and smiled. And I went, what? He goes, I knew that. I said, then why did you ask me? He said, because a lot of guys come in here and pretend that they know things about things. I heard you talking about reverse shell mergers. Didn't really hear everything that you said. But if you couldn't answer that question, I didn't want to waste my time with any of the other ones. And then we went to the law library and we started to work. And I'll tell you what, I got the better deal on this. Everything I taught him took about an hour and a half. I'm still learning from him every day. From Crete. From Crete, Illinois? Welcome, Chris. Glad that you're here. All right, peeps. If you're staring at a blank piece of paper and you're feeling like a failure, don't concentrate on failure. Just concentrate on all of the things in your life that are fantastic. Write down everything you have to be grateful for. And if all you have to be grateful for is the fact that you can still pull air into your lungs, because there are people that will say, you know what? I can't think of anything to be grateful for. Really? Do you have a 7-gram a day heroin habit? If your answer to that is no, you're not enslaved by the morphine molecule, there's something to be grateful for. I promise. Think of the things, and it's easy for me. It's easy for therapists, I think, because we're always talking to people and we're always working with people who are in really rough positions. And it makes you concentrate on all of the things that you have, right? A very smart person once said, it's happiness isn't getting what you want, right? It's being content with what you got. It's a much different thing. It really is. Besides, you know how many people get everything they want and are miserable? How many rock stars and famous people, they get fame, they get money, they get everything they want, and then they hang themselves because they convinced themselves for their entire life that if this happens, I'll be set. I was that dude, for real. I got sober, and I had told myself for 3 decades, if I could get heroin out of my life, I would be the happiest person in the world. Every problem I had would be gone if I could just quit doing heroin. Well, that's just not how it works. I wish it did, but that's not how it works. And all of a sudden, I didn't have heroin in my life, but I didn't get that, hey, here's your bar of gold. Here's your button that says you're going to be happy for the rest of your life. And the only thing that I got was reality. I couldn't turn off pain anymore. I actually had to face it. I couldn't make all of my problems disappear. I had to find a way to fix them. And in the beginning, I wasn't very grateful for that. But I got through, since my dad's death, I've had 2 other 10s. I've had 2 other things happen to me that were so epically bad that they rise to the level of a 10. Now I got 3 of them under my belt. I'm grateful for hell. You wouldn't believe how grateful I am that I know that no matter what happens tomorrow, I'm not going to get high. You never say that, Tommy. You know what I mean? You never say never. You say stuff like that as an addict. I'm never going to get high. Doesn't mean I'm going to do everything right. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be successful. But there ain't a chance on God's green earth that I'm going to stick a needle in my arm again. I will leave this planet without that happening. I promise you. I promise you. And not because I'm cool and not because I'm enlightened, but because I learned that if I write stuff down in this every day, I will keep track of the things that I'm grateful for. I will never find myself again on that perspective meter going in the exact opposite direction, looking at a silver lining and seeing gray. Never happen again. Thank you, Lindy. I will take all the prayers I can get. I really will. Love that. Love when people tell me they're praying for me or sending me positive thoughts. For real. There is I have a witch that writes to me on a regular basis. We don't believe the same thing, I promise you. We believe polar opposites in terms of what this person believes in the spiritual realm versus what I believe in the spiritual realm. But she will say to me, you know what? I did a ritual for you last night. Thank you. I don't understand it, but I know how much it means to her. And I know that it took her a hell of a long time to do it. And I know that the entire time she was thinking that she wants my life to be better. What am I going to say? Don't you do that. The hell's the matter with you? My God's better than your God. We really get crazy. You know that? I've had people say to me, don't tell me you're praying for me. That offends me. You can't know how bad I want to go. Really? You're an asshole. Sorry. It doesn't take a whole lot to just go, wow, right? I don't understand the ritual thing. Doesn't make any sense to me. But believing in something so much that you think what you're doing is going to make that person's life better, I know what that is. I understand that completely. So how am I not going to say to that person, wow, thank you? If that doesn't make sense to you, do a little more journaling. I promise someday it might. People, I'm going to be back tonight. Not sure if we'll be talking about something fun. There's a lot of Epstein, folks. There really is. And every day there's a little bit more that can be researched. And I'm not letting that one die. So not sure what we're going to be doing tonight, but I'm going to be here. And I'm going to be here at 5 minutes after 7. That would be on the Pacific time zone in the United States of America. Between now and then, put a little love in your heart, huh? And if you're staring at a blank piece of paper, talk about the things you're grateful for. If that doesn't work, ask yourself some questions. I'll throw one out for you. Tell your journal about your first kiss. That usually is something that you can remember, right? All right, folks, we'll see you on the next one. I am Tommy. This was The Love Boat. Love you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.